Welcome to Voice Rising with Kara Johnstad. Enjoy weekly conversations with leading luminaries, pioneering visionaries, singers, poets, musicians, and sound healers as we explore the profound role our voice plays on the path to self-realization and global enlightenment. The internationally acclaimed singer, composer, author, healer, recording artist, voice expert, creator of Voice Your Essence, and founder of the School of Voice, Kara Johnstad uses her extraordinary spiritual gifts to empower others. Everything in this world vibrates. Everything has a frequency. A pioneer in the field of voice work and transformational songwriting. Her breakthrough methods are helping thousands of people worldwide fine-tune their body-mind-spirit system and unlock the energetic frequencies of limitless creativity, health, and abundance. Share your voice, ask your questions, join in the conversation. Receive life-changing, positive transformation and rise together to create a sound world. And here's your host, Kara Johnstad.
Hi, beautifuls. Today we are diving deep into the wild and soulful journey of reconnection with none other than Mary Reynolds Thompson, a beacon of wisdom in the realms of nature-based healing and inner transformation. As the author of a brand new book, The Way of the Wild-Souled Woman, Mary guides us through the profound initiations of the Earth Woman archetypes, offering rituals, exercises, and meditations to awaken our fullest, most authentic selves. With her work, Mary bridges the gap between outer and inner nature, inviting us to reclaim our wild wisdom and embody the essence of our true nature. So grab a tea or something lovely to drink and join us on this transformative exploration with Mary Reynolds Thompson. She's with me now. Welcome, Mary, to the show.
Thank you, Kara.
So it's an absolute pleasure. It's a pleasure, Mary, to have you with us today. And I'm so curious to know more. I also read that you had a pig that used to ride around on in south of Italy. So that's you'll have to share that with us. But your work in rewilding the soul and connecting to our authentic voices is inspiring, and you do have a new book, which I had the pleasure to read. Share with me and our listeners a little bit more about your own personal journey of reconnecting to your wild soul and how it inspired you to write this new book.
Well, like many of us, I think I was very connected to my wild soul when I was a child. And, riding that pig along the dusty trails above Positano on the Amalfi coastline. And I got to sleep in caves as a child. I learned to swim in the Mediterranean where there are flying fish and incredible grottos. And this sense of deep enchantment got sewed into my soul. And then, like so many of us, I lost touch with that. And as I grew up, and started thinking about boys and began to worry more about, how I was presenting than what I was actually experiencing in many ways, I fell into alcoholism. And from the ages of about 16 to 27, I drank really alcoholically. I mean, it was like right from the get-go. And I think in a very funny way, that was my way of trying to find myself back to wildness, but in a very unhealthy way. And so at age 27, now having been born in London, now living in San Francisco, I was a week sober, and I was standing on the bluffs above the Pacific Ocean on a really stormy day, feeling terribly afraid, not knowing how I was going to live without alcohol, looking out at this churning ocean, and this thought came to me that the ocean was incredibly churned up and wild and whipping against the rocks, but it was also very strong. And this thought entered my head, perhaps despite all the churning inside of me, I was very strong too. And at that moment, I tasted salt in my mouth, and I didn't know if it was the ocean spray. I didn't know if it was my own tears. And I felt this complete sense of connection with this immense body of water. And I knew I was going to be all right, which has been true for the last 40 years. But I felt myself as part of something immense and powerful and extraordinary. And that sort of began another journey of rewilding.
That's beautiful. We are oceanic. I think anybody who's ever felt those salty tears drip down their cheeks can imagine that place. So you chose for this book to work with archetypes, and I believe you call them earth archetypes. And so what led you to work with these archetypes? So the ocean or the water energy is probably one of the many archetypes that we might imagine, but people know archetypes, also different archetypes. So what brought you to this very strong connection to nature and writing this book around 5 archetypes?
Well, first of all, my connection with nature was really so deep. And I began, as I got sober, to go deeper and deeper into nature. And then I discovered poetry therapy, and I studied poetry therapy for a period of 2 years, and I was immediately drawn to the nature poets. And what I realized was that though their eye was on outer nature, they always returned to inner nature. So this dance between our inner wildness and outer wildness began to fascinate me. And in a book that came out in 2014, Reclaiming the Wild Soul, I worked with 5 archetypes: deserts, forests, oceans and rivers, mountains and grasslands. But then, a few years later, I was asked to teach a course on the archetypes through an eco-fem organization called Tree Sisters, which raises money for planting trees, but also looks towards women's leadership. And I realized that in teaching the archetypes and in presenting the archetypes to women, our way of experiencing them and embodying them was different. So that led to this latest book, The Way of the Wild Soul Woman, where the archetypes became now desert woman and forest woman and ocean and river woman, etc., because the way we hold them is just different from the way men experience them because of our history.
Yeah, I always say that when I do songwriting with my clients, that it doesn't matter how many times I try, women simply, if they're allowed to be like rewilding their writing, they write often very, very differently from the form and the shape that the song takes on, right? It might be zigzag, it might not have a bridge or it just is a different, a deep flow, often a deep flow. Yeah, which I find interesting because it doesn't fit into the radio format. So even my writing too, it doesn't fit in anywhere, So, but women are, we are half of this world and we bring life to all of its beings. So it's very interesting that the way that we move and the way that we experience is not what is in the, not often what the industry, at least from music, honors or wants.
Yeah, and I think that that's really true. And I noticed one thing that really came to the fore when working with women from all over the world, different ages, different cultures, was that every woman had this common experience of feeling caged, of feeling tamped down, shamed, silenced, and a feeling that there was more to them than the present culture, really encouraged or allowed for. And so there was this very fierce sense of unshackling, of unleashing, of the moreness of who we are. And I think for women is that the patterns in our culture, the norms of our culture don't serve the way we are emotionally, intellectually, spiritually in the world. This linear path, which you're referring to, in Forest Woman, I talk, the big shift is that we move away from the linear path to the spiral path, to this sort of widening circles, to this always coming back to our own feral wisdom and intuition and knowing, and then circling out from there to discover more, but not walking from A to Z and missing so much along the way.
Yeah. I always stand and stare at tree limbs or river tributaries, right? All these arms. I mean, we literally call them arms. We call it a body of water. We do understand somewhere that we are connected. And I think, what about linear path? I mean, everything in nature is like, the branch goes in this direction, then a little branch in that direction, then is connected here, and suddenly the branch falls off and grows a new one over there. And yet when we ourselves, it's hard for us to give ourselves the permission to live life in that enchanting style, to say, I'm going to start a company. Oh, it doesn't work. Oh, I'm going to tweak it a little bit and invite other people in, and maybe I'm going to move to a different city where I like the weather more. It takes a lot of courage. I think, to really follow the inner voice and the inner guides that are with us. What's your experience? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it very much takes courage. And I think that to be a rewilded woman, to claim our wildness is an act of tremendous courage, because essentially the world rewards you for sticking to the straight and narrow, right?
Right.
It says if you do this, you'll get this, and then you'll go for that, and then you'll receive this. And sometimes we get material things, right? But many of us get to a place in our lives where we go, but I'm not happy. Or why am I even doing this? But the world says, keep going. At the end, you'll be safe. You'll be secure. It'll be okay. And meanwhile, our souls are suffering because we aren't following our energy, our intuition, our instinct, or the path of our true soul journey, which is very different from the path of the ego.
Yeah. Talk to us about storytelling and narrative, and how they play a role, how storytelling and telling our stories and maybe sharing our stories with each other plays a role in this work of rewilding our soul.
There's a wonderful quote that I'm about to misquote by Muriel Rukeyser, the poet, who says the world isn't made of atoms, it's made of stories. And I think what she's speaking to is how profoundly important storytelling is, because storytelling essentially frames the way that we see the world. It creates worldview. So in order to change the trajectory that we're on right now, which I think many of us would agree is pretty terrifyingly bad, is we need to change the story. And we've been living under the story that tells us that humans are superior to and separate from nature, that we can do anything we want to the earth, that the earth is an infinite resource, that certain people are better than other people, and on it goes. So that's where that story has gotten us to this point. So what are the stories that we want to tell that give us a possibility of shifting the trajectory, as I said, of where we're going. And my great belief is that we don't need one monolithic story. That's the problem. We need a diversity of voices with a diversity of experiences, all adding to the chorus of life. I mean, a tree has a different experience than a spider. A spider has a different experience of life than you and I. And we need to hear and understand each of those stories, human and other than human, in order to begin to create this rich sort of chorus that can sing the world alive again. I always love that the word enchantment comes from chanter, French, to sing.
Yes,
and
to sing.
that really to get back into storytelling is to begin to sing the world alive. As long as those stories are rooted in the understanding that we humans are part of an earth community. We are not, a collection of objects. We are a community of subjects. And I think that shift from thinking of the world as a resource to a relation is so key to the storytelling that is going to help heal us.
Yeah, I think you're so right about that, that this whole movement in Berlin, where I'm sitting now, there's a very, very strong movement with climate activists really risking their lives to wake up the governments and blocking, highways and airports and all these things. But I always think that unless the people themselves understand their relationship or their deep connection and are in awe of the air that they're breathing is the same air. This always is so amazing. The same air, we are breathing the same air, even though we're miles apart, but literally from, Rilke to Marilyn Monroe to Martin Luther King, we all breathe that air, whether we're in a body or not. I mean, it's just mind blowing. The water, the rivers, and suddenly it goes up into a cloud, moves on over, and comes down somewhere else. It's just phenomenal. And I think if we don't touch those magical places and find that connection, we can't do it only through climate activism, because the people, they literally don't get it. But if they lose their fresh water, and that's the problem, that then it's too late, right? Or it's almost where it's too late. But that's the thing. If they would lose the sun, let's say the sun doesn't rise, it goes on vacation. The sun says, "I'm fed up with you guys. I'm not going to rise today, and I'm going to sleep. I'm going to join the new moon. Like, why should I rise? I'm going to be a new sun and go, do a little bit longer eclipse." It's so funny. And what would happen? People would go into absolute, they'd be terrified if the earth suddenly went dark. But to respect these things, like the beauty of the sun or the magical qualities of the moon or the rivers or the trees, this does take practice, because we've all, I include myself in this. I've spoken of this very often on shows. My great grandparents, they came from Scotland and from Norway and from Sweden, and they were farmers, and they knew how to farm with rocks, right? I mean, very harsh climates, and they landed in Wisconsin. And so I grew up in Wisconsin on a huge piece of property, 500 acres, and unbeknownst to us all, we bought our food we farmed the land, but the crops got sold on the stock market to whoever. And my mother went into town and bought groceries, the iceberg salad, the whatever it is, the Pop-Tarts, I don't know what. And I am trying with a little community garden to rewild my soul now and to learn about, permaculture and mixing all these different plants. I'm planting flowers next to herbs. And I literally think in 2 generations, if not 3, my lineage is absolutely disconnected from how to grow. I mean, yes, we know how to plant a seed, but really, if we would have to live from the garden that I plant, at least, we would be starving.
Yeah.
It's an experiment,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's how quickly it is. It's less than 100 years, and humans have
Absolutely.
been thousands of years surviving. So our
Yeah.
disconnect has just it's been so quick. The last 100 years have really, really done so much damage.
It really has severed us, and I think I mean, it is so ironic to be living on a farm and buying
Yeah,
your produce and buying not
yeah,
particularly healthy produce at the
yeah,
local market.
yes,
But the other thing it really shows is how farming became part of the modern industrial complex,
right.
so that it wasn't to feed community, it was to participate in the larger commerce, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you plant whatever is going to get you the best return, and it becomes monolithic planting. So you're all corn or all this or all that, and
Yeah,
it's completely unsustainable in the long run.
yes,
And it's the way, I think, again, of shifting away from the understanding that the earth is our relation, that it nourishes us, and we in return need to reciprocate and nourish it. And of course, we've had this huge shift to urban areas, so that we now have more of the world's population living in urban centers than on the land, which, again, as you said, is an incredibly swift migration. I mean, it's
mm-hmm.
just staggering. And now we're moving into virtual reality, which
Right.
takes us even further away from
Yeah.
reality. There's a wonderful book by a woman called Charlene Spretnak called The Resurgence of the Real.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is so key, that in a way we say we're materialists, and we are in the sense that we're a consumer society, but perhaps we're not enough of materialists. In other words, we have ceased to honor, revere, respect the material world, the world that grows food, where the sun does rise and give us its
Mm-hmm.
energy, um, and all of these things. And we dismiss that, and we've gotten this huge mind warp that somehow we're so clever, we're so technologically astute, that we can survive even as the ecosystem collapses around us. I mean, that is a profound disconnection.
Well, that's where it's going when people start making, you know, GMO plant burgers or
Mm-hmm.
plant food, right? And I always say that I mean, this is a very crazy thought, but this is how I'm rewilding myself. I had an interesting meeting with a top politician here in Berlin, and she told me this story. She said, "Yes, we had a garden, and when my children went to kindergarten, we were asked to bring apples. And so we brought apples from the garden. And the teacher said, she was a secretary for health, right? Just by the way, in Germany. And the kindergarten teacher said, well, these apples, they have spots on them, and our children don't eat them. And so please go to the store and buy apples. And I said, I find as the health minister that was, obviously horrific, right? Uh, and what I'm trying to say is that because of the way also every zucchini is the same size, every banana is the same size, every apple is the same red, every kohlrabi looks more or less the same. When you go into a store, everything's been normed on mass levels. Then how, when we put that food into our body, how can we look at people and see diversity as something positive? I think it
I think
starts on
that's
the
absolutely
plate.
true.
And suddenly
Absolutely
somebody
true.
has a freckle or they have a mole in the middle of their nose. I mean, that's like the most beautiful garden apple you could have, right? And we're like, oh, we have to go to plastic surgery. We have to
Yeah,
change this, right? Instead of
yeah.
saying, wow, those freckles are so beautiful. You're so beautiful. Like, look at your eyebrows; they're all bushy and crazy. It's like wonderful. But it starts with our food because everything, the bread, everything's the same size. The windows have all become normed, and we used to have stories in the architecture and the windows and the I think in America it's still possible, but in Germany it's very difficult. Everything's been normed, right? And there we
Mm.
lose our wildness. Yeah.
We do lose our wildness, and I love what you're saying here because I think it's part of this rewilding is a rebellion against conforming
Yes.
to an ideal of what beauty is or what a good apple is or
Mm-hmm.
any of those things because it's saying I refuse to become plastic. I mean, what you're talking
Yes.
about is a kind of a plastic sensibility that everything has to be molded in exactly the same way, including our psyches and souls. And yet what we know about nature is the more diversity there is, the
Mm-hmm.
healthier an ecosystem. And that is really true of our own cultures. And now, of course, it's certainly in America, we live in what's called the great sort, right? It's like, you have your evangelical Christians living over here, your liberals over here, let's put old people all together in retirement homes. So we literally are sort of diversity adverse. And yet diverse cultures and diverse human cultures are also incredibly vibrant and alive. And I feel very deeply at the whole heart of rewilding the soul, right? Which is the thing that I am obsessed by in a way, is this desire to feel alive, to be fully present to and open to this extraordinary journey of living in a body which is made of exactly the same stuff as the whole earth out of which we emerged. And does that feel like? And here you have a plastic apple which is barely nutritious, and you have one, as you said, with the dark spots and everything like that, which is healthy and full of earth. Which one is more alive? Which one gives more life in the world? And I think there has to be this deep rebellion within us against being silenced and shamed and tamed and told that we need to fit into these tiny boxes because we don't want to be in boxes.
No,
We
we don't
might
want
think
to
that
be in boxes. We want to wear the shoes and not the boxes. Exactly. Or
yeah,
we want to go barefoot. I was thinking
yeah.
now, before we take a break, I was just thinking it's so funny. Now, rebellion has the beautiful word bell inside,
Mm.
which is a sound, and diversity and universe, of course, is very poetic because we are connected to verse. And as you say, stories are, yeah, are connecting us and are as present as all the molecules and atoms that are dancing in our bones. So, Mary, we're going to take a very, very short break, and then we're going to be back for more about your new book that you just brought out.
Conscious media for conscious minds. Times.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. ascendinghearts.com.
With happy clients all over the world, Kara Johnstad knows that your voice is the missing link to more authenticity, abundance, creativity, and health. An internationally acclaimed voice expert, Kara's breakthrough methods have helped thousands of people successfully heal their voice wounds. and extinguish the story of self-doubt and shyness forever. Join in group trainings, attend online sessions, schedule one-on-one time, and invite Kara to work with your organization and community. Get started today. Go to www.karajohnstad.com and receive a special guided meditation designed to fine-tune your inner voice and welcome you on the voice journey.
This is Kathy Beal, host of Celestial Compass, featuring astrology you can use. Celestial Compass points you to what's going on in the sky and what you can do with it down here on Earth. We also explore fun, effective, and cosmic tools for navigating this adventure we call life. Join me the first and third Monday of the month at 5 p.m. Eastern Time for Celestial Compass. It's enlightening, entertaining, and empowering.
Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of Times Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of Times. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community.
You came across someone struggling with hunger. How would you recognize them? Would you notice an 8-year-old girl who's not excited for summer
break because she may not be having lunch again until September?
Or a war veteran who's having a hard time landing
a job and getting back on his feet?
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Voice Rising. We appreciate your continued support. And if you are enjoying the show, don't forget to share it with your friends and family and subscribe on your favorite streaming platform to stay updated with all our latest episodes. The shows are also archived. If you go on over to Times Radio, they're all there. So now let's dive back into our conversation with Mary Reynolds Thompson. Welcome back, Mary.
Thank you.
Well, there are so many tributaries to follow, so many limbs to kind of scoot out on and hang out on with you. So let's go for overcoming core wounds. How can someone overcome a core wound using your new book and connecting with one of the earth archetypes as they explore the book and some of the rituals and exercises?
Yes, so each archetype has and offers a look at a challenge, a shift, and a way. And the challenge is really that core wounding inflicted by the patriarchal culture on women. So it's really about then looking at the ways in which we hold the hurt and the shame that is part of the culture's projection onto us. So, for example, in Desert Woman, so much of that is believing that we're enough. So we live in a culture that tells us as women that we have to be so nice, so giving, do more. We're often the ones who are doing the unpaid work or the chronically underpaid work. And we have to do all of this in order to gain the approval, the applause, and the affection of others. Mm-hmm. So that's a core wounding. And so we're always doing more. I mean, with each passing year, more and more women are suffering from chronic fatigue and other diseases that tell us that we are completely burnt out. So Desert Woman has us look at that and really begin to ask this question, what is it to be enough? To simply in your beingness, be enough. And if you were to do that, what would that look like? What would the shift be for you, right? And if you were to embody that aspect of Desert Woman that is self-sufficient, that is comfortable with solitude and silence and spaciousness, who would you become in the process? Because for women, this idea, that's why Desert Woman is the first archetype we encounter on the journey. It's because sometimes separating, and I'm not talking about having to literally, leave your job, leave your family, but you need to feel the contours of your own soul separate to everything else that puts demands on you. So there's this way you have to find 5 minutes of meditation, allow yourself, even while doing those daily tasks of washing up, making beds, doing all the things that we do in life, to touch in with yourself, to really get to know yourself in the bone. So that's an example of a core wounding that would happen in the desert archetype.
I love that. Know yourself in the bone. That's a powerful phrase right there, Miss Poet. Know yourself in the bone. I actually loved opening the book and starting with the desert because because I also, I think after the collective shift between 20 and 22, and we in Europe I'm an artist, I'm a singer, and so many things were shut down and closed off, and it would be nice if one could say it gave us time to relax, but being an artist meant we were in amazing survival scare. I'd have to say that, feel it in the bone. And when I opened that chapter, I had to think of Georgia O'Keeffe. I had to think about her lush, feminine paintings that were in the middle of the desert. And I had to connect because I've actually have never spent a lot of time in a desert. And it kind of scares me, to tell you the truth. It does kind of scare me. And yet the way I was guided through that chapter, I suddenly was trying to sense exactly that, the spaciousness of the sky, the immense, strong contrast of maybe color, right, between a sky and the sand. Or it really made me think. It made me think more because I think I would be more forest and river and ocean and deep flow. But I know, if I was being really honest, that I have felt it the last years, that the bones were dead dry. It's like there's no juice left. And that is what's so fascinating in the desert, all the song lines and all the people that have really managed to thrive in a way, in a very, what I would say, a more harsh environment, but the way you describe it in the book was, yes, very connected to solitude and very, very going deep within, put it like that.
Yeah, and I think, this aspect of Desert Woman too, which is to discern between the mirage and the oasis, what, to be in the desert, it is scary, right? We know that. You could die very easily in a desert. In fact, the desert is littered with bones, right? But people who are familiar with that aspect, they know where to find water. They know how to find that precious liquid to survive. And in a way, that's the power of Desert Woman, is that even when times are hard, as lockdown, COVID, all of those things that you're referring to was so hard on so many of us, she knows where to find those small wells of water that can nourish. And she doesn't need much, but she knows how to survive. And I think that's a very powerful thing, is she knows how to stay alive even under the harshest conditions.
Exactly. What are some of the unashamed, untamed, and unstoppable aspects of true feminine power?
So again, they're sort of reflected differently and spoken about differently in each of the archetypes. But I think, as I say, for Desert Woman, it's like, hey, I'm enough. Stop asking me to do everything. There. Forest Woman, it's like, hey, I'm going to take my own path through life. I am not going to be walking this path. I am going to go into the deep, dreaming darkness of my soul to discover what it is that I am here for, the seed of my purpose. And I am going to give it the time and the space and the dreaming it needs to take root in me. So don't rush me. Don't put me on your timetable. Don't tell me when I have to produce X, Y, Z, because I have my own way. Very strong statement from Forest Woman. Ocean and River Woman is, and Desert Woman is like the barren worlds. Forest Woman is the dark womb. And then we encounter Ocean and River Woman, who's the breaking waters. And she is about following our passion, following, what Joseph Campbell called our bliss, and finding out what brings us alive and undamning ourselves. So we've been damned, spelt both ways. Particularly as women, keep it down, don't be so emotional, but a rewilded Ocean and River Woman says, feeling is like my superpower. I trust my emotions. I am willing to surrender to this deeper, deeper longing of my soul and see where it will take me. So and surrender is such a tricky word for women, because we've been used to surrendering our way, surrendering our desires and stuff like this. But this is surrendering to the deepest knowing of our souls. And then in Mountain Woman, it's okay, and I love everything you say about voice. It's about speaking out. And it was interesting, as I was writing Mountain Woman, it kept coming back to essentially showing up and speaking out and really exploring all the ways that women have been silenced, and how that speaking our own truth is one of the most extraordinary, powerful things we can do, because we are so used to saying what other people want us to say, what will help us fit in. And women, when they like Greta Thunberg, like Simone Biles, like women who have just stepped out and told what they're experiencing. They don't sugarcoat it. They speak from that deep, deep place. That's rewilding. And then the Grassland Woman is, and Mountain Woman is giving birth, and then the Grassland Woman is really nurturing what's been born in us on the journey that we've been on. And her superpower is a kind of deep persistence, a sense that I have returned from this journey. I have sacred medicine with me. I want to offer it to community. Now I have to find that community. And it can be very much the most challenging thing, that as we change, the people amongst us actually don't want us to change, right? We're all excited about this and that, and they're like, I kind of like the old you, right? So it's about that willingness to keep showing up, keep offering our gifts, to stay that dedication until we find a community in which the very fullness of who we are can be brought forth. And that's a rewilding. And that's the rewilding that seeds other people's rewilding. It's about living in reciprocity. It's about giving of our gifts and receiving of gifts. And it has to take place in community. We can't just be, sitting on the top of the mountaintop anymore. We have to be in the world giving of our gifts, because that's the time we live in. None of us can afford not to give of our gifts, whatever they be. And again, back to diversity. What you give, what I give, what other people give, all different. But if it comes from that soul place, then it is meant to be part of our larger community.
And to go back to what you said at the beginning of the interview, I think was so beautiful, this to embody spirituality, to understand that we come from the earth. We have iron in our body, we have salty tears, we have all the minerals are in our body, right? We have air, we have breath, we have everything possible. We are made from all these elements, and the only way we're going to be able to move forward is not to be on that mountaintop and try to transcend it all, but to really embody it and be in the muck and play in the mud. Play in the mud. Here is time for a mud bath. He was like, it's going to be fun. It's going to be really fun, actually. In what ways do you see the principles of the beautiful principles of rewilding the soul intersecting with these broader social and environmental movements? We talked to, you mentioned Greta, and there's a lot of great people out there creating communities. How do you see that intersection happening?
Well, it's very interesting. I think I'm one of those great believers that, the shift of consciousness has to occur before the way that we show up and act in the world is aligned with the greater good of all, including the earth herself. So for me, it's about honoring all these qualities that the earth holds to be true, like diversity, like reciprocity, like authenticity, like this way that we work together and collaborate. So these are all things that the earth is doing naturally all the time. And in each of the chapters, I sort of talk about particularly how each archetype has a planetary purpose. Like if you think about Desert Woman and surviving on less, she is somebody to call on when you know that you're just buying too much. You've hooked into the consumer culture and you keep thinking you need this and you need that. She knows how to live lean. And all of us need to learn that, right? We all do. So if we can call on her when, the desire for the next XYZ is kind of calling to us, and just say, no, you have everything you need. It's a huge thing for us to do as people. And Forest Woman is very much about realizing and dreaming new ways of being. One of the things that we really lack, I think, in this big transition is a vision. I mean, it's all very well to say we need to change, but change to what? And what would that look like? And how would we even start that? And Forest Woman is that deep dreaming place where we get to imagine and be in the fecundity of our imagination to start dreaming new dreams for the world. And Ocean and River Woman is about discerning between the mainstream with its powerful current and the deeper soul yearnings. Because when we show up in the world, dishing other people, buying stuff, being the good consumers, being the good capitalists, it's because we think it's going to solve something in our souls, right? And Ocean and River Woman says, no, there's a deeper current. Go there, solve it at that level, and your behaviors will change. And then Mountain Woman is really about kind of changing the entire landscape. She's very interested in structural change. She knows, we can't just, shift seats on the Titanic, right? We need to rebuild all of our structures, which is terrifying. But she's the one who has that vision, that big vision of knowing that the structures themselves have to change. And then Grassland Woman is the one who keeps asking this question, community, community, community. Is it good for the whole? Is it good for the whole? If I do this, how does it serve the whole? And so these are all ways in which rewilding shifts our way of seeing and being in the world in a way that is very, very different, but has us really think about the impact that we have.
I'm so much looking forward to this world. I tell you, I'm just very excited. I'm getting very excited. Just the thought of everybody going back to regenerative garden and and sharing their pumpkins with each other and
Yes.
and right and walking barefoot and looking up at the stars that are so beautiful. Mary, you obviously are working also in workshops and retreats. So where can people get to know a little bit more about your work, and maybe where can they pick up a copy of the book if they would like to?
Thank you. Well, the best way to find out about everything I'm up to is to go to my website, which is maryreynolds.thompson.com. So it's just my name.com. And you'll find a list of all the events that I'm doing and the workshops I'm giving. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold. It's actually going to be coming out in German.
Nice.
In September. So any of your Berlin friends listening in, yes, in September it'll be out under New Erd Press in German. And yeah, so it's available anywhere books are sold. Of course, it's always lovely if you go to your independent bookstore and ask for it, or to your local library to see if they would get some copies. So, all for that. And if Amazon is it, then Amazon too.
Right. I think that's the thing, right? Wherever you are, you have access to the books, but of course you want to support your local communities and independent booksellers. They're doing an amazing work out there, keeping sacred spaces for us to just relax and browse and stumble upon things that we might not stumble upon with the algorithms that are leading us in a certain direction. I'm addicted to bookstores of all kinds and shapes. And I want to thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your insights with us and creating beautiful, safe places for women to deep dive into their poetry and stories and rewild their souls. And like I said, I really would love to see us co-creating this earth and this planet that you have envisioned in your books. And to all our listeners out there, please remember to subscribe to Voice Rising and share the love that we have here with your friends and family. And you can join us next time as we dive into the world of music and are going to meet the composer, pianist, and singer-songwriter Rebecca Harold. Until then, thank you, Mary, again so much. And stay tuned. Keep your voices rising. Bye-bye.